Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, thanks for stopping by. I'm Carol. I'm glad to have you here and I hope you will consider subscribing. So today we're going to have some Mexican cooking fun going on in the kitchen. We have Cinco de Mayo coming up here in just a few weeks. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to show you how I make Crockpot barbacoa. Now the inspiration for this recipe was my sister-in-law. Her family, they have family dinner every Sunday, and one of their favorites is barbacoa. Well, she was using a seasoning packet, a liquid seasoning packet to make her barbacoa, and I believe she was using the Instapot. So this recipe is for an Instapot or a Crockpot. I'm going to be demonstrating Crockpot. So she came to me and said, I'm having a really hard time finding this seasoning packet. Could you help me find a way to make it homemade? And of course, I love a good challenge, and Mexican cooking is some of my favorite cuisine. So I was all about coming up with a way to do this. So I did some research on barbacoa. There are a lot of different ways to make it. So I went to the ingredient list on the seasoning packet that she was using so that I could help her replicate that flavor, since that's what her family enjoys. So this is what I came up with. This is how I make barbacoa. So please don't send me an ugly message telling me this is not how you make barbacoa. This was my response to her to make something similar that her family would enjoy and that she could have handy to use, just like the seasoning packet she was using. So the star of our show is really going to be chipotle peppers in adobo. These are fantastic. They're easy to find in just about any grocery store in the international foods aisle. So you're going to need those. You're going to need some fresh squeezed lime juice. We're going to be using some little bit of apple cider vinegar. If you don't have apple cider vinegar, you could substitute another vinegar. It would be totally fine. But apple cider lends a little bit of sweetness in the background of the seasoning, and some really delicious spices. We're going to put all of that in a blender and mix it up, and then we're going to cook it in the crock pot with our chuck roast. Now this is going to make enough seasoning for more than one roast, depending on the size of your roast. For today's purposes, and since it's only me, I'm using about a 2-pound roast in my crock pot. So the recipe that we're making is going to be more than what you need. So I have divided, I'm going to show you how to make the recipe. I divide it by 4. So for approximately every 2 pounds of meat, you're going to need 1/4 of the recipe. So for those of you who follow me for canning, because I know I'm going to get this question, I have not found a safe way to can up this sauce that we're going to make. So I can't do that yet. I am going to be doing some exploring to see if we could can up barbacoa, but for right now, what my solution is to make a batch of the sauce, and then I just freeze it in these little containers. You could freeze it in any type of freezer safe container. You could also use freezer bags to freeze it so you have it ready on hand to go whenever you want to make barbacoa. Like I said, you can make this in the Instapot or you can make it in the crock pot. I don't have an Instapot, so I'm going to be demonstrating how to do it in the crock pot. If you don't want to use fresh squeezed lime juice, you could always use bottled lime juice as a good substitution. I am going to be using Mexican oregano. That is fantastic in Mexican cooking. A lot of the recipes that I looked at just use regular oregano, which is fine, but the flavor profile will be a little bit different if you do that. Mexican oregano, if you can't find it in your grocery store, you can buy it on Amazon. It's really easy to find there. Now, I'm just going to sear my meat and then put it in my crock pot, add my sauce. If you wanted to infuse more flavor, you could also use the sauce as a marinade. You could marinate your chuck roast overnight and then brown your roast and put it in the crock pot and do it that way. It's entirely up to you. If you want to skip the browning step, you can skip the browning step. Just put your meat in the crock pot with the sauce and let it go. Lots of different ways to do this. You just do it the way that suits you. You could use the barbacoa to make burritos, tacos, burrito rice bowls. You can use it a lot of different ways. I love it stuffed in a baked sweet potato. If you want a little bit healthier way of eating it, you can put it on top of nachos. Sky's the limit, use your own imagination, but it's great to have on hand. Once it is cooked, if it's more than what you or your family is going to eat, it's fantastic to put in freezer bags, stick it in the freezer, and then when you need more later, you can always pop it out of the freezer for a quick weeknight meal. So I'm gonna bring you in close and we're gonna get started. Okay guys, we are all set to make our sauce slash marinade. We're going to start with 1 can of our chilies and adobo. To that, we are going to add 1 6-ounce can of tomato paste, 3/4 cup of fresh squeezed lime juice, 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar, 4 to 5 cloves of fresh garlic, tablespoon of pepper, tablespoon of salt. We want 3 tablespoons of ground cumin. 1 heaping tablespoon of Mexican oregano. If you don't have Mexican oregano, which I highly recommend using, if you don't have it, you can use regular oregano, but it's not the same. 1 tablespoon of onion powder. We're going to use 1/2 tablespoon of smoked paprika and 1/2 teaspoon of ground cloves. Put the lid on the blender and then we are going to blend this until everything is nice and pureed. All right, we are gonna start by browning our chuck roast on both sides. 3 to 4 minutes on each side is good. You wanna make sure you have a really nice hot skillet. I have about 1 tablespoon of olive oil in my skillet. And I'm just gonna let that brown on each side for 3 to 4 minutes. Before we put our lid on, I'm going to go ahead and add a bay leaf. You can do 1 or 2 bay leaves depending on how big your roast is. Then we are going to put our lid on. We're going to cook in our crock pot either on low or high. I'm going to cook mine on high for 3 to 4 hours. My roast is pretty small. It's only about 2 pounds. So it just depends on how much meat you have and how quickly you want to cook it. I'm going to cook mine on high. And after our meat is fall apart tender, we're going to shred it, and then our barbacoa is all set to eat. Okay guys, we are all done. How simple was that? I did go ahead and pull apart my delicious roast and then poured the sauce on top of it. It's perfectly ready to serve just like it is, but if you like it crispy, kind of like carnitas, you can put a little bit of oil in a pan and you can toast it a little bit before you serve it. Perfect for tacos, burritos, burrito bowls, nachos. Like I said, I'm going to enjoy it stuffed inside of a baked sweet potato. Lots of great ways to use it. So I hope you will give it a try. One of the things that I wanted to note was the way I've developed this recipe is it is a medium heat using 1/4 of the recipe of the marinade slash sauce that we made at the beginning of the video. If you like yours spicier, you can always double the amount of sauce that you are using for every 2 pounds of meat that you are using. You can also add some cayenne pepper, some Tabasco, lots of different ways to spice it up and make it hotter. But I just wanted to note the way I've developed the recipe that I use for my sauce is really for a medium, just a nice heat in the background. So I hope that that's helpful. I hope you'll give this a try. If you have any comments or questions, leave them for me in the comment section. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you next time. Have a great day.